So today's agenda, I'm going to quickly recap what we went over in session 1, but you guys also have links to the recording as well as the deck from last time. I'll just show you what our Slack channels look like, so just in case you haven't found them yet. I'd love for you to join them all. And we'll talk very briefly about some basic resources for UX research. Somebody mentioned in the steerage survey that they would love to learn a little bit more on their own. So I'm providing some of those. I would like to hear some of the project ideas that you guys are coming up with to help me decide which examples I need to provide with for you, what templates I might need to provide for you. Since everybody is working on their own unique project, and I don't yet know what that might be, it was a little bit difficult for me to provide more examples in this presentation. So I want to hear what you guys are thinking about working on. I'll talk a little bit about the research materials that you guys are going to produce across the month of December that you want to have ready for the next session, and then also list out what exactly you should have prepared for January. All right, so very quick recap. We talked about portfolio FAQs, and then I also had some wonderful questions in the chat last time that we didn't get to since there were so many of them and some of them required a more detailed answer. So I have answered all of those questions in writing now, and they are linked in the Slack community. Please go there to check out my answers to the excellent questions that you asked. I would like to mention one of them in particular. Somebody asked if it's how official the stakeholders need to be. For example, could you talk to potential users for, say, a prototype that doesn't exist yet? Or could you just conduct a usability test of a shoddy website that exists and then make that your project? So my response to that one is please find and work with real stakeholders. This is important because your project will carry that much more weight in an interview and of course in your portfolio, because when you are being interviewed, they really want to see how you are interacting with your stakeholders. How are you making sure you get alignment from them? How are you managing them? How are you educating them about research? So you want stakeholders who will actually be able to take action on any findings you have, any recommendations that you make. And if you're having trouble with that, again, feel free to jump into the Slack community. I will be there to help you think of ideas or to help you tweak anything that you would like to bring up for me. In session 1, we also talked about this general workshop plan and timeline. Everybody who responded in the chat seemed to think that this was a reasonable timeline. So hopefully we will continue with what I have planned. I have already set the dates for the January session and the February session. So be sure to look for those events and sign up for them. Actually, maybe Janine, is that something that you can link to, or would they be able to find that on their own?
Yes, I'll put the link in the chat.
Okay, great. Awesome. So definitely sign up for those if you plan on continuing with the workshop. I did hear in the steerage survey that some people wish to audit the workshop, which is fine. They're not planning to finish a case study and show it to reviewers. So that's a-okay. I don't want to gatekeep knowledge in any way. So you're welcome to just follow along and hopefully learn something for when you do actually do a portfolio project of your own. And we also talked about how to find your stakeholders, hopefully through warm connections. And then we brainstormed a little bit about possible research questions that you could come up with for existing connection that you already have. Okay, so highlighting again the Farewell Academia Slack channels. I'm not sure if you guys are seeing the same view that I see when I open the platform, but I made a section that's called Farewell Academia, and then we have multiple channels underneath it. So there are some that are more general, like you'll see the networking one, the resources one, where you'll find all of the FAQ answers, as well as some extra resources that I've added for you. During the analysis of the steerage survey, I asked you guys what you were hoping to get out of this workshop and what you just needed more knowledge around. So I tried to provide as many helpful resources as I could for the things that you guys were asking for. But if you do not see these on the left side of your Slack community, I believe you can search for them. Please let me know if that is not the case, because I might have to invite you. But if you can add yourself, that would be wonderful. I don't want to accidentally miss anybody or put you into some channels, but not others. All right. Okay. Let me go ahead and move forward so that we don't take too much time here. As I mentioned before, I'm sharing just a few Research 101 resources. I do wish that we could go deeply into what UX research is, all the different types of research that there can be, as well as all the different methods. But sometimes those are things that deserve probably an entire class of their own, really. So it's outside of the scope of this workshop, but I am giving you some good resources that I have seen myself that I recommend, and feel free to dive into these. When I share the slides, you'll be able to click through, but the same links are also shared on the Slack community already under the FAQ and resources channel. So definitely have a look at those. There are also some excellent ones. I think really you can just Google for them if you don't find that these meet your needs. So please do, search Google on your own. And some people, I think, may have signed up for the research bookmark Intro to UX Methods workshop that's happening December 9th and 10th. I thought it sounded very helpful. So a link to that is also in the Noteworthy Events channel. Please sign up for that if they are still taking registrants. All right. So let's hear some of your project ideas. Oh, Janine, were you talking?
No.
Oh, okay. I thought I heard somebody talking. Feel free to either speak up or pop in the chat if you don't feel like speaking up about some of the projects that you guys have been ideating on this past month. And I'd especially like to hear what methodology you might be considering so that I can create a resource doc for you of tools that you might consider using. Feel free to jump in. Or raise your hand if you want to be called on. Anybody?
I'll go.
Okay, Michelle, is that you?
Yeah, Michelle, hi.
Okay.
I'm trying to narrow down. I have a general idea of what I want to explore, but I'm trying to narrow down what way I want to explore it, and I'll explain what I mean.
Okay.
I work for an IT department in a library, and we take in help tickets.
Mm-hmm.
And we recently had to migrate to a new system, and it didn't go as well as we would have liked. And I think it kind of is clunky, both from the user perspective and for the people receiving the tickets perspective. So that's what I'm trying to narrow down. I feel like if I explore it from the user perspective, the people we serve, I'm sure we'll find lots of issues to explore, but at the same time, I don't know that I'll necessarily have recommendations for my department to actually put forth because of the limitations of the software. So my other thought is to focus on it from my fellow coworkers' standpoint as both the stakeholders and the users and how they could better work with the software. So I wondered what anybody's thoughts were on that.
Oh, that's really interesting. May I ask, just to clarify, this new ticket taking software, is it something that your company is able to alter or change in any way? Or would you just be helping them find, I guess, a better way to work with it?
Yeah, excellent question. So I think it's okay to talk about what it is. It's Atlassian product, and we used to have an on-prem version, and we had to migrate to the cloud version. And with Atlassian, we use the ticket system is called Jira, and then there's a wiki aspect called Confluence, and then there's a front end portal where users can put in the actual tickets and search for, documentation, that kind of thing. And when we moved to the cloud version, we didn't have really an option. We had to do it. And hence that's why I'm saying, to come at it from a user perspective, they're going to say just switch systems. Well, we can't really do that. But because it's in the cloud, we do have some limited options to customize, but not as many as we once had. And from what I understand, we've put in some, not me personally, but people have put in tickets to request changes to the system. And it's not happening. I mean, obviously it's going to come when Atlassian can get to them, or if they prioritize them.
Right. I'm thinking about this, and everybody, if you have suggestions, also feel free to jump in. I guess my initial thought is, if it's incredibly user unfriendly, and you're able to gather compelling evidence for that, like for your coworkers being on the ticket taking side, that you could potentially find out what they really want in such a software, and make the case that it really does need to be changed, or perhaps you guys could onboard an additional software that helps compensate for what Atlassian is lacking. Again, you mentioned that probably your organization is not likely to change this software, but if you were able to gather evidence that shows how glaringly deficient it is, perhaps that would help make the case, and instead of just getting complaints here and there. If you had something very compelling and organized, it could be impactful for your entire organization. Just putting it out there. I don't know. Again,
great advice. I really appreciate
change it.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, and it definitely is kind of a tough position to be in, that maybe they won't take your recommendations, and I think that definitely happens with any research project. But usually change starts with one person saying, well, we really need this, and this is why, and then just very much pushing for it and showing the evidence for it, and kind of socializing it, managing the people who are around you to get them to see your way. So it sounds like a really strong idea, if you'd like to take it on that way. I agree with what you said about the user side maybe not being as compelling, that you may not be able to do as much to change things for them that's actionable.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Of course. Yeah. I really look forward to seeing how that develops. Does anyone else have any ideas for Michelle?
Hi, Miriam here. Hi, everyone. Yes, I've been thinking about a project. So I work at a center for community engagement at an institution of higher education. And I do evaluation and assessment. And recently, well, since the pandemic, really, the resources that we've been able to offer to our community partners have been lessened, and there's also been a turnover in that key position. And so I'm working with the new person who heads that part of our work, and really trying to hit the reset button and design. What I'm thinking of is design a survey to run by our 400 plus community partners, questioning them, assessing what services and resources they find most beneficial for them, how our processes are either supportive to them or not, from establishing a community partner agreement to recruiting students who work and they host the service learners, to the toolkit workshops that we offer, networking mixers, trainings and resources in terms of supervising volunteers, or budgeting, marketing themselves, finding grants, writing grants, etc. And so my initial idea is to have a survey initially, and then do a couple of focus groups with 10, no more, organizations represented, to focus on, based on the results that we get, dive a little deeper into certain questions and aspects of our work, and how effective and how impactful it is with our partners. And then maybe add 2, 3, 4 interviews to top it off. So this is my initial idea, and I'm having, this is really also evaluation, and so I'm having a hard time drawing the line. Is it the right direction for user experience? And I'd love to have your feedback.
Oh, okay. I do think that this delves into user experience. You're asking for their preferences in what they want to see, almost like features, really, like feature preferences. So that could certainly be a survey. It could almost be a card sort too, if you've ever considered that methodology. That's one way that you can look at preferences. I am curious why you're choosing focus groups. Is it because of the number of people that you wish to talk to, and you're just trying to be economical with time? Or is that a preferred method for you?
It would build on the initial survey that's designed to reach more people, and then focus groups would target, because we have a lot of partners, several hundreds, but some partnerships sometimes are dormant for a number of semesters, and then there's turnover at different organizations as well. And so the focus groups would focus our closest partners, the ones that are more consistently involved with our center, and maybe have also more in-depth knowledge of what's been done before and how it could be adapted to changing needs, or adapted to begin with. So partners who've had this kind of time depth perspective because of their longitudinal collaboration with us.
Okay.
What was the alternative method you said would be another potential one in addition or in lieu of surveys?
Potentially a card sort.
Okay.
I can certainly provide some resources around that too, just so you can see what it is and how it might work, and decide whether you prefer the survey. After all, this is your project, of course. I guess one thing that I would say about focus groups is, although we do use them in user research, they're somewhat more common in marketing research. Oftentimes, because you have multiple people in focus groups, it's not the best way to deep dive into subject matter. And the way you were speaking of these partners who have that, I think you said, like time depth experience with your program, they probably would have really.
Yeah, so Michelle just, she put in the chat website, idealist.org, I think, .com. As a place to look for volunteer opportunities. And so she threw that out there for people that might be looking for places.
Yeah. I think I also have a short list of other potential civic tech orgs where people can volunteer in my big Google Doc of resources that some of you guys may have seen. It was linked both in the Slack community as well as, where did I link it? I think I linked it in the networking spreadsheet as well. So if you guys haven't checked out that Google Doc, there are some other places that you can potentially volunteer there as well. I've heard good things about Idealist, but I have never tried volunteering with them before. So Michelle, do you have any personal experience volunteering with them? I would love to hear your thoughts if you have.
No, not personal. I just saw it recommended, I think in a Facebook group, something like that. And I thought, I'm definitely going to look into that.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I volunteered with Hack for LA, which is where I got some of my volunteer experience before actually interviewing and then getting my contracts at TikTok and Meta. So definitely recommend this is a way to get experience under your belt and gain some confidence so that you can refer to yourself as a UX researcher. I think one of the great things about these types of organizations is that you're making a real impact, usually for community partners or government organizations. I don't know what projects Idealist works on, but as an example, Hack for LA, for example, has Ballot Nav, which I think is like a website that you can use to figure out where your closest polling location is. So it's just really, these types of organizations are usually just a gathering of volunteers from different walks of life who have either technological skills, editing skills, writing skills, marketing skills, who can pitch in and help either a government org or maybe a nonprofit that doesn't have this type of resource, either create a website or app to get their jobs done. So I do highly recommend that type of experience. And I wouldn't even necessarily tell future employers that it's pro bono work, because it uses your real time and it has a real impact. These are real organizations that you're working with. So I usually wouldn't even mention it unless they were to ask. What is one more thing I would say about civic tech orgs? I guess one potential negative of working with civic tech orgs is because it is, I don't like to say it's a negative. It's just a drawback. It's just that because it is a network of volunteers, usually sometimes the projects can take a really long time before you get from beginning to end. So if you're looking to get projects into your portfolio quickly, it's not the fastest way, really. But if you have plenty of time in the course of your transition, why not? Like, it's something you can devote anywhere from like 5 to 10 hours to per week while working your full-time job or being a student. And get some of that experience under your belt, as well as meet other people who are either transitioning or already in the industry, since many of the people who volunteer are actual developers, designers, and researchers too. Sorry, I rambled a bit for that topic, but it was something near and dear to my heart as well. Any other project ideas? Or should I try to jump back into what we were talking about before? I think, I don't know when my audio cut out, but I was just saying that focus groups are somewhat used more frequently in marketing research rather than user research. Often with user research, we really like to dive deep with each person, like in a one-on-one type of interview. And I know that you had suggested follow-up one-on-one interviews, but since you mentioned that those partners that you guys work with, that you would have conducted focus groups with, have a great deal of experience with your program, they would likely have a lot of great experiences and insights to share that would be harder to get out in a group setting, just because there are more people in that setting trying to talk. So if you do go the focus group route, you might consider restricting the number of people in the group to something rather small. 5 might be manageable. I probably wouldn't go over 5, and even 5 is quite a few people already.
Thank you.
Do you have your own experience coordinating focus groups, by the way?
I do.
Okay, great. So you would certainly know how to manage and any type of issue, like people who aren't jumping in quite as much, and as well as people who could be dominating the conversation. So it sounds like since you have experience in that already, it could be a really strong methodology for you to pursue. Janine, I think I saw you raise your hand.
Yeah, let's see, Megan, do you want to, Megan asked the question while you were out and kind of got talked about. Do you want to just ask that question again and see if Helen has any insights to add?
Sure. So, you know, a little bit because I've talked to you, like I'm trying to transition out. I have the skill set because I like passed the interview process and then hiring freezes came. Where I currently work is very teaching and service heavy, so I don't really have connections outside of it. And I also have to be careful not like to tip my hand in the process. And so my question was like, how do I find, you know, stakeholders for a project when I don't have those outside connections without like tipping off my employer? And then also the additional issue is if somehow I can find someone within the university, we're on winter break from like next week until the beginning of January. So that doesn't really work unless it's like a staff office because they're on like 12-month contracts instead of like the 9-month.
Well, let's see. I still like the idea of exploring your warm connections completely outside of work. I remember I gave some examples of a mentee of mine in the last session. Did any of those maybe jog your memory for something that you might have in your life?
I don't really have warm connections outside of work. And that's one of the reasons I'm looking to transition is like like within my department specifically, we do so much that like by the time weekend gets here, like you're just trying
Totally
to,
understand.
yeah.
Totally
so I don't
understand.
really have connections outside of work.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
besides
that's
like informal like UX groups and things I've joined, but that's not the type of connection like you had talked about that like, oh, you have this relationship, you see a problem, you offer like, oh, we could do this.
What about somebody in your family? Are your parents volunteering anywhere or serving on boards or a spouse or children, or et cetera? I don't want to assume anything, but if you are still struggling to think of something, let's definitely jump into the Slack community and start just noodling on this and see if we can come up with something for you.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, I feel like I also need some time to maybe think of ideas, and I'll have a look at your LinkedIn profile. If you want to send me your resume, if it's different from what's on your LinkedIn, I can try to come up with something that way too. We'll find something.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yes.
I just had another thought too. If your LinkedIn headline has a keyword in it, like a sector that you're interested in or like a problem that you're interested in solving, the algorithm will start recommending connections to you.
I did not know that.
Yeah, so I mean, like there's actually 2 people that I've become really close friends with over the past year. And one was because I had startup in my headline, and the other one was UX research, but we've become close friends. But yeah, they just came up as like recommended people. And then when I had startup for a while, people started adding me as connections as a startup. But then someone else said, take it off if you're trying to get into UX research because they want you to have more corporate experience, not the startup stuff.
Oh.
So, and like, I mean, if you, yeah, like finding different Facebook groups. Like there's so many of them, right? Like, yeah, it's just once you know what you're interested in. Anyways, that's just my thoughts.
Yeah, thank you for that suggestion. I did not know that the headline itself would allow people to I guess, be suggested to you, or that it would suggest you to other people. So this is really interesting. I guess LinkedIn is improving their algorithm. So I like that idea. I love the idea of poking around in the Facebook groups too. Megan, we'll find a place for you. I think I'm thinking of various resources where there are companies asking for people to do short-term projects and such. We'll get you connected to those. Just reach out to me on the Slack channel and just make it, I guess, something that everybody else can see. So just in case something I suggest to you can help somebody else, that way it will just be available for everybody to see.
Multitasking, I already posted in the identify stakeholders channel. So.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, great. I will jump right into that later this afternoon. Let's see what time we're at. Well, is there anyone who had a burning research project that they want to surface here, or should I continue? I have a few more slides to go through, but we have time for another.
I'll talk about mine really quickly.
Sure.
I was a digital nomad working for a startup in 2016, and I was in Thailand for 6 months. I did my PhD research in Thailand in archaeology, and the startup had nothing to do with that. But I could never find a place to work or people to work with. So I was like, I want to make an app for this. I want to make an app for this. So I still want to make an app for this. So I started some Facebook groups. Yeah, so I did a competitive audit, or I'm working on it still. Net ethnography I want to work on, and doing some interviews. So yeah, just trying to figure out what kind of app to build. So that would be my UX research project. Okay. And then if no one hires me, which has been happening, I'm thinking about applying to an incubator.
Very neat. Oh, this is ambitious. And are you interested in potentially like seeing this through? It sounded like this is something you have very much of a personal stake in. So if you were to make this your project, would you look into assembling those real stakeholders, like at least a developer or maybe a designer to work with and actually build it out?
I found a Facebook group called Startup Founders, and I just posted the idea. I said it was just very much in idea stages. And yeah, I chatted with like maybe 4 people after that. But one is a developer in India that has his own company. And he's like, he'll do sweat equity. So, and then another person was offering too. So yeah, like I'm finding people that are interested.
Great. Remind me that this is something that you're working on. I might be able to send you a few other websites where you can find potential collaborators or possibly investors. I don't know how successful people are in doing that on these websites, but there are some websites where you can potentially find more help if you decide to kick this off. Yeah, that's really exciting.
Yeah, I mean, I love the startup space, but I just hate the no job security, no benefits, poverty. So I don't know. Either way, like I figure this project will give me a portfolio project, and it will also give me like a slide deck for an early stage incubator.
Yeah, absolutely. This is exciting. Great. Looking forward to working with you on this.
Thank you.
Okay. I guess I will go ahead and move forward. So I'm just going to minimize this again. Actually, move that over there. Okay. All right. So let's talk a little bit about the materials that you guys are going to start assembling over the course of this month. And of course, I will be providing some examples for you guys. There's already a set of templates in the Slack community, but I will turn this into a template for you too. The research plans, also known as research briefs, also known as proposals, tend to look just about the same from team to team. I modeled mine, of course, on the work I was doing at TikTok, and then I was surprised to find when I went on to Meta that they use pretty much the same format. So although the headings may be a little different, or they might call them by different names, there's typically the same types of information going into these materials. And every so often, if you work with like a different collaborator or a specific team, they might have their own format that they like you to follow, but typically it's going to revolve around the same bits of information. So usually you'll have a list of your stakeholders. I've just made kind of like a fantasy or de-identified version of a real research plan that I once used. So this is not a real company, but it is the actual project that I conducted for them. And the stakeholders, I changed their names, mainly because I didn't ask them if I could use that as an example in this webinar. But the stakeholders may seem like a very basic thing to list out, but whenever you get to the interview stage, when you're interviewing with different companies, they will usually ask you, what are the roles that you worked with? Because they want to understand whether you have experience working with project managers, product managers, engineers, also known as developers. If you have experience working with people in the C-suite, heads of strategy, content designers, also known as UX writers. Basically, they want to know who you've been communicating with, and I think who you have been able to pull ideas from too. Since when you work on a team, research is still very much collaborative. You may be the only researcher on the team, but you're getting feedback from all of these different functions. And then you will be giving recommendations that will impact all of these functions. So they want to know that you've worked with people other than just yourself and other researchers. And then you'll usually talk about the background somehow. This is kind of analogous, I think, to when you were in academia and you are conducting your lit review. Yes, we definitely do lit reviews in industry as well. They might look a little bit different. Usually they won't go on for pages and pages, and you might just choose either the best resources. They could very well be things that have been done internally at your company, or they could be academic articles as well, or a mix of them. And this just helps explain to anyone who's reading your proposal, why are we doing this study? Why now? What exactly is the question, and why is it so important that we address it? And typically, I would say that research plans can be anywhere from maybe half a page long to about 2 pages long. Mine are typically around 1 page long with a lot of space in it. I try to keep mine pretty brief. It only takes me like 30 minutes to an hour to generate one for every new project that I do. But when you're doing one for the first time, obviously you're probably going to put more thought into it if it's, you know, the first one you've ever done. And then also you may have less boilerplate that you can reuse. I often reuse parts of my background if I'm working on the same product for multiple projects. We can also include any past research that you have done on the topic. So this is, again, kind of leading into something like a lit review. And then you also discuss your research questions at a very high level, like what are the general themes that we're trying to understand. So the research questions here are not the actual literal questions that you are going to ask in your survey or in your interviews. It's just to give your stakeholders an idea of what's going to be covered so that they can give you feedback on it and maybe suggest new things, and also helps you shape your survey or your moderation guide when you get to that point. You can't see my methods section here because I only did a screenshot of the first page, but I think everyone coming from academia is not a stranger to methods. You'll talk about what methods you've chosen. Typically in the research plan, you wouldn't explain why, but you would be prepared to answer questions about why in an interview. They might ask you, well, why didn't you do this instead? And so it helps to sort of document to yourself, even if it's not in the research plan, these are the specific reasons why I have narrowed down all these various methods and tools and chosen these particular ones so that you have this information. If you're being interviewed like 5 or 6 months later, you might think that information is still fresh in your mind, but I can tell you it can go very quickly, those little details. So document well as you're conducting your entire project, including the decision making that's happening. That your thought process and your decision making are parts of the experience that interviewers will definitely want to dive into. I think that incentive is something that we kind of take for granted in industry. Usually we have some type of money to pay our participants, but in the case of the research that you guys are doing, you may have to be scrappy or think of some non-monetary incentives. So I think many of you guys probably have experience doing that already, but if this is a discussion that needs to happen, we can definitely talk more about it in the Slack community. Materials would be, of course, either your survey or your moderation guide, any type of designs that you might want to show if you're partnering with a designer, or a live website or app, anything to help illustrate visually to your users what you're talking about. And then you'll also have a proposed timeline. So I will be linking to all of these in the Slack community as well, but then they are also already linked in this deck so that when you guys have the copy of the deck, you can click in and see the full research plan. So we actually only have a few minutes left. I'll just zoom through this. The moderation guide. The way this is usually organized is I will put little notes to myself at the top of the moderation guide, like start the recording, check that they've signed their agreement, their research participation agreement, so that I don't forget to do it. And then the introductory paragraph that I read to the participant is pretty boilerplate. I've listened to many researchers conducting their interviews, and we generally hit upon the same things. Like we set the context, we find out if they're used to doing this type of research. If it's their first time, you try to make them feel a little bit more comfortable. You make sure that you're getting their consent to be recorded, and that they're agreeing to screen share if you need them to do like an on-screen walkthrough. And then just let them know that there really are no right or wrong answers in research. We're just looking to improve, and that they should be critical and honest and can even be negative, that they wouldn't hurt my feelings. And that seems to really help a lot. I think people come in ready to give good feedback. And then below that, you actually put your question guide. So this is an example of a moderation guide for one-on-one interviews. It sounded like some people are considering doing surveys. I don't think I have a template of a real survey that I've done that I can share, but I can maybe drum something up, or if anybody, I guess just let me know if you guys need a survey template, because if you are using the survey methodology, then you might already be familiar with the programming and I guess the programming and recruitment of surveys. We definitely use things like Qualtrics and SurveyMonkey in industry. So if you already have experience with that, great. Maybe you can even use that same tool. Or if you want to gain experience with a different tool from what you use, this is a great time to explore that as well. The screener, I have a tendency to create my screener last, so I left it for the final document. This is something to think about depending on where you're going to be recruiting. The screener helps you select people who are the right users for your study. So if you have a really niche product that you're working on and you already know the people that you're going to recruit, you might just need to ask some demographic questions because you've kind of already personally selected them. But if you are planning to recruit in some more anonymous or large space where there are a lot of strangers who might be incentivized to get in either to troll you, or maybe you have a great incentive, you want to be very careful with the questions that you ask so that you can weed out the people who don't actually qualify without tipping them off to what you're looking for. So we really don't have very much time. I'll write some examples for you guys and put them in the Slack community. But knockout questions will help you eliminate some of the bulk of the unqualified participants at the beginning, so that they don't waste their time going through the screener. I'll give you some examples of what a leading question might look like and what a better alternative can be. And then I often like to include open-ended questions for one-on-one interviews, because this is a way for me to select participants who are very insightful about themselves, who can go into detail in an organized sort of way. And then it's not really a proxy for language ability. And sometimes you want people who are non-native speakers, as in the case of this mail swap project that I did, because the website was only in English, but we wanted to make sure that global users knew how to use it. But having those open-ended responses is just a way to understand better what you might be getting with that particular participant if you choose to interview them. All right, let's try to wrap this up. So December, this is where we're at in the plan and timeline for the series. So you are going to be aligning with your stakeholders, if you haven't already, to understand what questions you might be able to answer for them. So they might already have some ideas for you, and then you can certainly propose ideas to them too. It can go both ways. And then you would look at the questions and see which ones are something that they can take action on, and which ones are questions that you can potentially answer in a short project with the methodology and tools that you have available to you right now. And then you'll actually complete the research plan, the moderation guide or survey, whatever materials you need for the project, and then think about when you need to start recruiting. So to wrap it up, these are your goals for the next session. It looks like a lot, but don't worry. I promise you that this is absolutely manageable. So remember, when you're producing your research plan, go back and forth with your stakeholders. When you're working on research, you never work in a silo. You're never in isolation. If you want your stakeholders to buy into the recommendations that you're going to give them, they absolutely have to be involved early on and throughout the process. So you don't just talk to them once and say, okay, that sounds great, I'm gonna do a project for you, and come back like a month later and say, well, here are your results. It's not the way that it should be done when you're working on a team where everybody's work affects each other. So make sure you communicate thoroughly throughout the whole process with the people that you're working with. And then figure out which research materials you need to produce. If you need examples that are different from what I've shown you guys, let me know. I'll try to find either examples that I've done, or if it's a methodology that I haven't used, I'll try to find a guide for you. And then talk to me about your screeners. If you aren't used to writing them, just let me know if you're having trouble with any of them. I will give you some examples in the Slack community as well that you can hopefully model on. And then work with any stakeholders that you need for other visuals that you might need for your study. Sometimes you don't need any visuals. I've definitely conducted generative research where we're just trying to figure out what exactly to build for a particular audience, and we just talk to them like in a very cognitive ideation sort of way without taking a look at anything. And then think about if you need to start recruiting early or not. It just really depends on who exactly is going to be included in your study. If it's a really niche sample that you have to look in different places to recruit for, you might want to start recruiting early on, even before the next session, which I think is January 7th. So let me know. I want to be your partner in this. You're definitely not alone, so come to me if you have any uncertainties or questions. I will say one more thing here. If you plan to submit a case study for review in March, that is, you would like the recruiter, our special guest, the recruiter, or our special guest, the hiring manager, to look over your case study and give you comments, please have me approve your research plan and materials before you run out and start recruiting and fielding. And that's just to make sure that it's going to be up to their expectations. So kind of your safety cushion right there. And if possible, please allow me at least 72 hours of turnaround time to review your materials, especially if you have complex ones. Just because I suspect a lot of people may submit them around the same time, like at the beginning of January, and I would certainly need time to give you good and thorough feedback. Okay, so we are right at the very end. Are there any quick questions I can answer before we all sign off? And I can go back to any slides if you need to see them again, but we will share this deck out afterwards. Feel free to unmute or pop in the chat, whichever you prefer. I think some people might be submitting questions. Let me have a look. Nope, okay, just thank yous. Do I see any questions?
And I added all the links again, so you don't have to scroll all the way up if you want to check those out.
Thank you so much, Janine. You are always on top of things, and I'll be in the Slack community like shortly after this if I didn't get to your questions. All right. Okay. So just wishing you guys a happy early new year, happy holidays if you're celebrating any this month, and take care of yourselves. Just remember, you already know more than you think you do, and now it's just time to put it to work.